Indigenous worldview meets global politics in Greenland, an island where 89% of the population is Inuit. The country is front and center in President Donald Trump's America First agenda.
We need Greenland, very importantly, for international security. We have to have Greenland. It's not a question of, do you think we can do without it? We can.
We learn more from Chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, Sarah Oslvig. Here is Stuart Huntington with that conversation.
Joining me now is Sarah Oslvig, a former member of both the Greenland and Danish parliaments. She is currently chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, representing Inuit and Yup'ik communities across the Arctic. Welcome, Ms. Oslvig.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, Sarah Oslvig imik ataqarpunga. Inuit issittormiu siunnersuusoqatigifianni siulittaasuuvunga kadaallinaaningaannerslungalu.
Thank you. The ICC recently convened an Indigenous Knowledge Focus Group under the theme Advancing Indigenous Knowledge from Theory to Practice. The group promoted the idea that Indigenous knowledge needs to be meaningfully engaged in the development and implementation of international policies and agreements. Talk to me about the importance of that work.
Well, Indigenous knowledge for us is everything. This is about how we think, how we live, our ways of knowing, and it is the knowledge about being human, but also being human in close interaction and with nature. It represents our worldview of humans not being separate from nature. And this intrinsic relationship we have as Indigenous peoples, and specifically as Inuit, with the nature around us, is what informs our Indigenous knowledge. And for the Inuit Circumpolar Council, promoting the recognition, the full recognition of Indigenous knowledge in its own right, it has been a very big theme for our leadership throughout time, since the early beginnings of the Arctic Council. And that's why we have been working for everyone around us to recognize that our knowledge is, I don't even want to say just as valuable, but valuable as a knowledge system and should be recognized as a knowledge system in its own right. And that the knowledge we produce as a humanity will be incomplete if we don't include Indigenous knowledge.
And going a step further, Fawn Sharp, a Nature Conservancy board member and former president of the National Congress of American Indians, says Indigenous leadership is required to lead humankind through the Anthropocene. What do you think of that idea?
I fully agree. And yes, and that's also what we see when we take it to the governance level, that we convey, at least for Inuit, we are there also, for example, in the UN and other places, representing a different worldview than we see the sort of mainstream state representative do. Often we see international agreements built on the basis of a worldview that humans and nature are separate things.
Yes.
And for us, it's not. So when we are there pushing for not just our knowledge, but our worldviews to be included into these texts and new approaches to conservation or management of this and that, or shipping in the Arctic, for example, we come with the worldview that humans are inseparable from nature, that we are one, and therefore we need to have that perspective when we then start talking about management. And I think that we share with Indigenous peoples from all over the world, and we must continue to stand shoulder by shoulder in that very important push, because we see time and time again that decisions are taken without us. And so we need to maintain, our push and stay in the seats at the table wherever we've created those seats. And if we don't have a seat, we have to kick in the door and make sure that Indigenous peoples are part of the negotiations.
In 1977, nearly 50 years ago, the ICC resolved that the Arctic shall continue forever to be used exclusively for peaceful and environmentally safe purposes. Ms. Oslvig, is that idea more important today than it was back then?
Yes, I think that it has never ceased to be important, and it is as important today as it was back then during the Cold War. 77 was the year that the Inuit Circumpolar Council was established. And we paved our way through across state borders to be in contact with Inuit from across four very, very different nation states. So here in Galaslit Nunat, Greenland, Canada, Alaska, the US, and Chukotka, Russia. And that we have been able to build our cooperation across state borders, I think, speak to the importance of indigenous peoples being able to work people to people, cross-border, even in difficult times. And we are upholding that promise of the 77 first ICC conference. It's not easy, and we have reaffirmed our 7711 resolution that you referred to in our General Assembly Declaration from 2022, which is our current mandate. And we continue to insist on working together peacefully based on diplomatic dialogue.
And of course, I have to ask, how does that thinking intersect with President Trump's declaration that the United States needs Greenland and wants to incorporate Greenland into the United States?
Well, we have been following the news, and we've been here. I mean, I'm based in Nuuk, so I have seen a lot of the events take place live, as, for example, January 7th, when President Trump's son arrived here in Galaslit Nunat, in our capital, Nuuk. And what we have clearly stated from the Inuit Circumpolar Council is that there's no such thing as a better colonizer. And we have, as indigenous peoples, as Inuit of the Arctic, we've been able to work based on mutually respectful dialogue and diplomatic efforts to build our self-governance systems. The systems that we have here today did not fall from the sky or were granted to us by someone else. We fought for them ourselves, and that will continue. So we would like to see a cooperation continue to be based on diplomatic and mutually respectful cooperation and on dialogue, based on those rules-based order and international instruments that we have built through decades and decades, because times today are different from when our lands and peoples were just mere commodities that could be bought and sold.
Sarah Oslvig, thank you so much for joining us today.
Røyana, thank you.